All right, gang, we have been at it since the first week of September when we chose topics, gathered some resources, started taking notes, developed subtopics, did some research questions, all sorts of stuff. And now it's time to actually think about your National History Day project. This is an overview of the 5 project categories for National History Day. You will find much more information in detail on Google Classroom. You will see an overview of the 5 project categories: documentary, exhibit, paper, performance, and website, in alphabetical order, not the order that I usually go through them. You will also see the official rule book. No matter what, make sure that you are looking at the official rule book for whatever category you choose. You will also see project examples from the last 4 NHD national contests. If you take a look at them, you just expand them and you can see example documentaries, exhibits. Take a look at these and make sure you kind of see what kind of stuff is going on, how they're organized, and all that kind of good stuff. And then there's a nice little thing from National History Day in Wisconsin, which gives really good guides for each one. Once you get your project type chosen, click on this guide, and it really has some awesome information. I love it. It's way better than I'm ever going to give you. All right? But let's dig into these 5 project categories. Now, it doesn't matter what category you choose, you've got to have these. You've got to have a thesis. You've got to prove a point. That's got to be very clear in any project. You got to have detailed research. All right? And we've been working on that for months now. You have to have primary sources as part of your research. That's going to be key. That's what historians use. That's what you're using. You have to have an annotated bibliography, and you have to have a process paper. We will talk about the process papers once we get into January. They are easy to write, and Doc will help you make sure that they are awesome. And then they must be original. They got to be your work. You can't pay anybody. You can't plagiarize, all that good stuff. Now, let's take a look at these different categories. You've got exhibit, documentary, performance, website, and paper. The first 4 can be done by groups. All 5 can be done as individual. Only an individual can write a paper. There are no group papers. Let's start with exhibit, which is a visual representation of a topic and its significance in history. It's supposed to be like a museum exhibit, a small museum exhibit. Think about it. We just went to Kenosha. You saw some examples of museum exhibits there. We were at Discovery World. If you went through the Les Paul thing, they had museum exhibits there. It is a combination of text, visual images, and artifacts that enhances the message of your exhibit. The exhibits, you get 500 original words, including titles. Those are words that you wrote yourself that came out of your little brain or your little brains if you're in groups. It doesn't include quotes. It doesn't include any, it doesn't include small captions. It doesn't include necessarily footnotes, although we might have to look at that. The size limit of an exhibit is 72 inches or 6 feet tall. It can be 40 inches wide, which is more or less 2 of my desks in my room, and then 30 inches deep, which is also 2 desks if they are facing each other. You can have multimedia in your exhibit, but it's limited to 3 total minutes. And in an exhibit, you get the materials. I don't provide you with trifold boards because not all exhibits are trifold boards. You got to get the exhibits. You got to figure it out. These are some examples of exhibits that I've taken pictures of in the past. You can see that some exhibits are trifolds, and the one on the left, I believe, actually went to the state competition. It was a regional exhibit. It went to the state competition. The one on the right I picked out because I thought it was kind of cool because it was a park bench. It was about Rosa Parks. I'll tell you that it didn't move on, partially because it didn't have great content, and also the books in the front of it just didn't do anything for it. Here you have an exhibit on the left. We got a couple guys doing spear fishing. That was a spear fishing exhibit. The walleye war, and that's visible on 4 sides, so there are different dimensions for a 4-sided exhibit. The one on the right, yeah, it's got a potty on it. Kind of cool. This is one of my favorite pictures that I like to show here. Here are 2 exhibits that are large French fries. My point being that you do not have to do a trifold. Trifolds are fine. They are okay, but 20% of your exhibit evaluation is the presentation. And you can get creative, really creative, if that's what works for you. Here's a Piper from many years ago. She actually built a comparative dam with the a dam out in the west. And here we have Sally and Ellie from many moons ago. My God, they've graduated from college. They had it was about milk strikes, and they have an old milk jug, but it turned, it spun. That was their moving timeline. So, the idea on why you would do an exhibit, you got a visual topic, you're a visual person, and your partners want to do an exhibit. Those will help you out. Why would you not do an exhibit? Because you're not visual, your topic's not visual, or you don't think you can fit it into the 500-word limit. That is a challenge. The easiest way to do it within the 500-word limit is to support everything you say with quotes and objects and images and pictures and artifacts. So that's a little overview of an exhibit. If you're interested, check out some of the examples that are online for ideas. In exhibits, subtitles are necessary to organize your exhibit. Those subtitles are usually your buckets. You can use media, but only if it helps your thesis. When you present your exhibit to me the first time, you're going to organize it, and then the last thing you're going to do is glue it. In fact, I don't want to see it glued down until I've given you some feedback. And exhibits are easy to do, but they're also easy to do kind of lousy. So I'm just giving you some ideas here and some information about exhibits. If you are like more of an artsy crafty kind of person who likes to do things visually and put things together, then the exhibit might be your best bet. A documentary is kind of like a History Channel documentary. Images, film, video, photographs, audio, music, excerpts, and then you put it all together into a 10-minute video. They are 10 minutes maximum. You don't need footnotes on your script, which is kind of awesome. There is no word limit, which is kind of awesome. You do have to include credits, which you do at the very, very end. And there are so many examples online. In fact, if you go to YouTube and you look up almost any historical topic, if there is a 10-minute video on it, it's probably an NHD documentary. Why would you do a documentary? Because your topic has a lot of images and multimedia. The more recent topics are often used for documentaries. You like to use iMovie. Almost everybody does it in iMovie. You can also use Final Cut Pro if you want. That you think that you can get enough images, video, and audio for 10 minutes, and you can be creative. Now, this is not being creative like you're acting in it. You do not appear on screen, but you can be creative with how you present your information. Why would you not do it? Because you have few images and no multimedia. You know, if you're doing something like about colonial America, it's hard to find a lot of images. You don't like using video editing? And I will tell you that documentaries are quite time-consuming, especially if you're in a group, because usually your documentary is only successfully done on one computer. Some documentary notes. You always write your script first, no matter what. Then you add images and video. You don't start putting your documentary together and filling in around it. News headlines from the historical New York Times make great images. You can include you can include interviews, but they can't be too long. Think about this. If you have a 10-minute documentary and you have a 1-minute interview, that would be like having a 10-page paper and 1 page is just a printed interview. So there's not a ton of research there. Your interviews should supplement and support what you're trying to do for your research. And all images in your documentary have to be cited. We use a different bibliography for that. If you're interested in documentaries, I suggest you take a look at some of the examples. I can point you to some other great examples, including our documentary by Lexi Vandenheuvel that won the national prize about 6 years ago. A performance. For my thespians out there, a performance is simple. It's a dramatic portrayal of a topic and its significance in history. It's like a one-man or woman or 2-person, 3-person, 4-person show. It's original and creative. It's not a report. It's not a presentation. It's a performance. It's got drama. Sometimes it's got humor. It's got acting. Sometimes it's got a lot of props. Sometimes it's really, really low on props. However you want to go about it. These are some examples of pictures of performances that I've had in the past. Each one of these did very, very well, either getting 3rd in the state or 1st and 2nd in the state. You can see 3 of them were done alone, and they were each in a setting. Derek here was remembering what it was like to be a World War I tank driver. Julia played Colonel Jim Lovell, who went to the moon. Alexis played a teacher for jazz dancing. And this is Caroline, who's that? That's Brooke, and Jessica. They did 3 women's rights leaders at a tea party, which was kind of fun. Performances are 10 minutes. You don't need footnotes for your script. You do all the costumes and multimedia if it's necessary. You do the performing. You got to set up the staging for it. Mr. Edwards, by the way, will possibly help you. And eventually it has to be memorized. Does it have to be memorized for February 2nd when these things are going to be seen? Well, it would be good for that. But if you are going to compete at the state level or the regional level, the state level, it's got to be memorized. Why would you do a performance? Because your topic is dramatic. Because you can set a great scene or scenes, and also because you like to perform. I've had a couple kids do it before because they don't like to perform and they wanted to stretch themselves. I loved that. Why would you not do a performance? Because you don't have a dramatic topic, you can't set up a great scene, and you don't like performing. It's pretty obvious there. Some performance notes things, just like with the documentary, you go with your script first. You set your outline for your script, and then you go and you dig in your script. It's got to be memorized. You incorporate primary source quotes, and in the performance script, you can also have primary source documents in your script as artifacts and refer to them, like use them as props. And yes, props and costumes are important, but they are not as much as important as the content. I said, Alexis went to that I showed you with the jazz dancing. She went to the nationals. She had she wore a leotard and she had like one picture. I had a guy, Michael Smith, a couple years ago. He went to nationals. He had a costume and a goblet, and that was it. Sometimes they like less of props and things like that in scenes. I would also add for performances, I sometimes feel that they are the easiest ones because you do not have to cite a ton of sources on your script. And therefore, and also judges don't see your script if you perform in front of them, so they'll never know if you messed up, which is kind of a good thing. Our fourth category, individuals and groups can do websites. A website is an interactive hypertext and multimedia-based site of information and images. Okay, it's kind of like an exhibit, but on a website. It's also like a paper, but with the benefits of being on a website. Here's an example that went to nationals a few years ago about strategic bombing. And you'll see that right here you've got the subtopics. Those are all the buckets. Okay. It's done on NHD Weebly. It has to be done on NHD Weebly. You cannot use a different website builder. And I'll tell you about that if you decide to do a website. Your website has to stand alone with no external links. You can't link to YouTube. You can't link to other websites. You can't do that at all. It is no external links. I still think they have 100 megabytes max memory, including video, but nobody ever gets there. Multimedia, I think now this might be different, but each clip used to be 45 seconds. We'll have to check that. They might have a total amount of video now. It is 1,200 student-created words maximum. And it definitely should be interactive. You want your audience to interact with the website. You don't want it just to be reading. Why would you do a website? Because you've got a lot of text, but also a lot of images and multimedia. You can't do the 500-word exhibit, and you like technology. Why not do a website? Because your topic has little non-textual material, and technology hates you. Website notes. This has been getting more and more competitive, and also judges or directors of NHD have said it's now taken over for exhibit as the one that's done the poorest usually. Everything's got to be on your site. Don't include opinion polls or quizzes because they don't support your thesis. And the hard part is how can you get it interactive? That's one of the big deals. Okay. If you're interested, go look on the different websites that are available on the NHD site. When you get to the project examples, you can hit websites. Oh, here's Tinker versus Des Moines. We studied about that, didn't we? So as you can see, here's Tinker versus Des Moines, the way it looks. You've got the different buckets. You can see that underneath them, they've got different information, the number of original words, 4 minutes of multimedia, all that good stuff. Kind of head in here. You'll also notice on websites that they have citations for different of all the different information that they got. So there's a little bit about websites. If you're interested, check them out. There's a ton of them. Finally, we go to our traditional paper. This is individual. It's the traditional research paper. It's on white paper with black 12-point font. You come up with a thesis and you support it. It's like a real long DBQ sort of essay. And you can do it fictionally. We've had success with that. We've also had challenges with that. But it is for our writers out there. The basics, 1,500 to 2,500 words, including all quotes. So anything you quote goes in that word count. You have to cite it within the paper. And Dr. Walzak and I will help you do that, of course. And you don't need to put in any images unless it's necessary. It's not, only if those images really help support your thesis and tell your story. You don't need, like, if I'm doing one on Ronald Reagan, I don't need a picture of Ronald Reagan because that doesn't help support my thesis. Why would you do a paper? Simple, because you like to write. And your topic can be explained without images or multimedia. Why not? Because you don't like to write. And your topic cannot be explained without images or multimedia. If it's a real visual topic, if you're doing an art topic or something like that, don't do a paper. You got to have footnotes, 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 and you got to proofread, proofread, proofread. And again, images and diagrams only if it supports the thesis. Also, papers can only be done, again, as an individual. Just kind of keep that in mind. Now, you're going to be completing some project plans. They will be available on Google Classroom. You want to plan your work and work your plan. You don't just start cutting boards for an exhibit or putting your website together. You want to plan it out. Plan out your project. Okay, it's like making an outline of your overall project. Here are some final thoughts as you are choosing your categories, gang. Okay, I want you to think about what your goal is. If your goal is just to survive, show your project off on February 2nd and go no further, which is fine, okay, if that's your end-all goal here, choose whatever you want. Okay, whatever you think is going to make you happy, healthy, and all that good stuff. If you want to compete, all right, you might want to consider what other people at USM are doing. Because here's the deal. The UWM regional competition is in March. Okay, it's March, what do I want to say? Is it March 5th or something like that? I don't know. It's in early March, the first weekend of March. Now, I can send up to 5 individual exhibits and 5 group exhibits, 5 individual documentaries and 5 group documentaries, 5 individual performances and 5 group performances, 5 individual websites and 5 group websites, and 5 individual papers. So USM can send 45 projects to this competition. Now, that doesn't mean that in every category we're going to send 5, even if there are more. But what I mean is if you're really in it to win it and you are trying to determine between a documentary and a performance, maybe wait and see how many people at USM are doing a documentary and how many people are doing a performance. Because if there are 10 people doing a documentary, 10 individual documentaries, I can only send 5. But if there are only 3 performances, and you're choosing between, a performance or a documentary, well, I'd go with the performance because your chances of going on to UWM are much greater. Now, if you're in it to win it, that means that it doesn't matter what your competition is. You feel like you're going to crush this thing. Do whatever you feel you can present your the way that you feel you can present your research the best. Okay, that's your goal there. So hopefully this helps. Look online. This is the third big decision. You chose your topic, you chose your partner, or going alone. This is your third big decision, and we are going to be working on these for at least the first 2 weeks when we get back from winter break. That's all we're doing in history and English is working on NHD. Those first 2 weeks, it's going to be NHD crunch time. You also can, if you want to, work on it over winter break. You don't have to. That's up to you if you want to take a break. But that's where we are, my friends. All right, it's just around the corner. We are a month and a half away from presenting these to our families and friends. So start thinking about your project category choice. Bye.